Okay, well, a lot of people say to me, how do you learn to paint like that? Well, I think you need a good grounding, a good background, and the place to get that is through drawing. I do lots of these small, A4 size drawings, and they tend, they're tonal, so you can work out where the lights, where the mediums and where the darks are. You can also work out composition. So overall, they are the thing to do. So all I want to do in this video is to take you through the process of actually how I produce a simple drawing. The pencils I use for this type of drawing when I'm outside or making quick studies are Derwent sketching water-soluble pencils. There are 3 grades: light, medium and dark. I normally start off with the lighter one. I then go to the medium one that puts more graphite onto the paper, and then if I really want a dark area, I use the dark one. But basically, most of it will be done with the light and medium wash pencils. So that's quite as simple as that. So let's get started. Okay, well, I've done, as you can see, this was actually a scene when I visited the Yorkshire Dales. It's a lovely stone building, a lovely stone garden, rather derelict at the moment. You can see there's holes in the where the tiles are missing, and it goes up the hill, and there's a track here. But I like the scene. So let's see what we can do. Well, very little sky indeed. So what I'm going to do is to just put in a couple of darker trees up the top there, a bit of hedging perhaps. That tree is not too dark. So that can be a lighter tree if you wish. Well, perhaps we'll put a bit of colour onto that. I'm going to have light coming from the right hand side. So we have to remember that when we produce these subjects. That is a separation of the field, I seem to remember, where the field goes over and up. So quite likely we will have a little bit of shading. And when you shade the way the land falls, because that immediately gives the viewer a chance of seeing the contour of the land. So that goes uphill, right? And immediately you can see how that goes uphill. So that goes uphill over a ridge and up. You could just put a bit of light pencil work on that as it goes over the ridge at the top. Okay, now this is a bit of a hedging there. Just from memory, I can remember this. Always a good thing to produce drawings. It's surprising what you can remember, and then it comes to a stone wall. Now that's a stone wall there. It's got those lovely bricks on the top, or stones on the top, and then it falls away to the left. I'm going to sit that tree right on that. Right, now how do you sketch a tree? Well, you get the dark, medium and the light. First off, I'm putting in the light, and notice there again I'm sketching the way the leafing would actually form. So it's more or less coming towards you there, and then it turns down. The outside edge of this tree, quite uneven. I think it's an oak tree. So this is just the very, what I'd class as the light areas. Very little in the way of, no detail, just the way the trunks or the branches I've put a bit of trunk work in, as you can see. We'll elaborate on that very shortly. And so that's the top of the tree, and that becomes more open at the top. Trees tend to not be quite as dense at the top, and light and dark areas. Most of the dark area will be to the left because the sun is coming from the left. Now this one is also a tree which will have light and dark areas, and this one is not quite as detailed, sitting at the back a bit, a little bit lighter at the top there, but it will show up, because I'm going to be fairly dark with this tree, it will show up the light of the roof and the old stonework, and it opens a little up there. Notice how they're just rough marks of pencil, just so I can give myself a bit of an idea of tone, the way branches hang down, and this one hangs down, goes right out the side there like that. There you go, and it hangs down like that. It was summertime, so there's lots of leaf on there. This looks dark, but it's only the medium to light tones that I'm putting on there. There you go. So immediately we've shown up the corner of that building just by simply making a dark tree in the background. Now now we've got a very dark tree, and this one stands in the foreground. So notice how I'm using more bold drawing to get this, and it will overlap the building because it's in front of the building, not behind. So that goes like that, and a lot more bold sort of marks. In other words, you know, you would see larger leafing in the foreground than you would in the distance. See how there's just a cluster there, then it's a bit open there. Now this is open and broad pencil marks, not dissimilar to the way you would actually paint it really. And I would be on site doing this normally. I just thought I'd save that one for when I got back in the studio, just to show you how I'd achieve that sort of effect really. You know, it really is it's a lovely thing to do, sketching. Let's pull that across there a little bit more. It really is, you know, to me it's as satisfying as painting really in many ways. Now I'm going back over just to fill that up a little bit, particularly in the main body of the, you know, still only the light tone, because I'll show you how to do the rest of it soon, but a little bit of darkness there, real overhang of darkness there, because that's where the darker leafing is. For obvious reasons, the sun coming from the left, so the tree overhangs quite dark at that point. I'm using top quality paper, so don't be afraid to spend a little on your sketchbook. Pink Pig are quite a good make if you search that. I do use Canson sketching pads as well. You know, there's wide variety. Pink Pig are good. I like their sketchbooks. They can have watercolour sketchbooks as well as watercolour paper. So I've made a little more of that, and it's, if you notice, it's a tone darker than the trees I've put in earlier. This is only the light wash pencil. There we go. So that's the tree coming down. Okay, now let's deal with the roof. Now we do have, when I've been shading, you get a flat on the pencil. So just turn the pencil down, and all of a sudden you get a point. So that's the way you get a nice point to the pencil. And these old slates and need to be put in fairly simply. There are one or two missing, as I said, and they need to be put in at the angle. Now these are missing, so you'll have let's just put a rough idea of where the joists would come. Okay, but in between those joists, you can see into the depth of the roof. So, for obvious reasons, we need to shade those areas in. Another area there, but leaving the joists white paper. And all of a sudden, you can see that we have openings in the roof where the tiles are missing. Right, let's not take that any further than that. Okay, we may have a cross section there, so we'll split that one. Put that like that and that like that. There you go. Brilliant. Now just line where the outside edge of that is. Go across there, right angle, must go at the right angle. There we go. So that's where the tiles are missing. Then we have the openings for, I don't know whether these are sort of like where the doves, they used to open these up, I think, to aerate the barn, but these days you get sometimes just openings in the stonework. You get the owls get in there, which is quite a nice thing to see, and you can see that sometimes if you're late out in the sketching outside. And then, of course, the edge of the tile there, the edge of the tile there, quite rough and uneven. The overlapping tile there, that's useful to draw in. And then put in one or two cross sections. Don't want to overdo this, it's only a sketch. I know some of them come up quite nice little drawings, and some people actually you know, use sketches purely for their main artwork, which is fine. It's good, you know, if you enjoy sketching. Sometimes line and wash. I have produced a few line and wash. Okay, then we have stones that are quite uneven here. When you put in a suggestion of stones, you don't need to put them all in. Just a suggestion of a couple of uprights. The corners sometimes have sort of like a different type of stone, purely because it's of a better grade to support the corners. A bit like a proper sort of more like an engineering stone, really. I suppose in our day it's engineering bricks you'd have on the side, or the Norfolk cottages, they have bricks on the outside and flint in the middle with the bricks to take the weight. But these are more block stones. Now, when you come down, to put another couple of those in, don't overdo that. Remember the perspective when you put a suggestion of these in. If you're, you know, you need to remember, not a bad idea, just to put a few in like that, just to give you an idea, and then you can just put some uprights in. Just gives you an idea of perspective. Okay, yeah, that's going to have a lot of sun on that. Then we have the underside. There is a wall thickness before we get to the door. So that's the wall thickness. Now we could put a door on it, and there was a door, or you could leave an opening. I don't think I want an opening there, because the eye will be led, but then come back and go up. So I'm not making these doors too interesting. You know, but then we have a bit of stonework on the surround, and the surround like that. We have some uprights in the door. I suppose we could put a couple of hinges on there, really. You know, just to make it. I think that's another small door. We'll call it a small door. Brilliant. Then, but these will be openings, okay? We have the stone wall finishes there. So this is a stone wall. This is a part of the track, the uneven track that comes down, there's grasses growing and all the rest of it, you know. So, and notice I'm going up with the grasses. I'll come down the bottom because that's the way they grow. But then as they go away, although they grow up, they get a bit smaller. That's good. Now this is an opening. Okay, so, and you can see the complete width of the stone. So we're going to have a shadow there, but the shadow inside is going to be considerably darker because, as I say, it's an opening. Now you've got the thickness of the stone and then an opening in the door. That's how you do that. It'll all be revealed later. And this is similar. This is the stone itself. Then we have the opening. And normally make the bottom part of the opening a little bit lighter because right, now I'm going to go in with the medium wash just to get just a little bit more tone to it really. This is slightly darker softer pencil that will give me a slightly darker tone, and this is where everything seems to get very interesting because you can darken up certain areas that you need to darken up. So it's more or less like using a HB, 2B, 6B pencils really. The only thing being, this is water soluble, whereas pencils, ordinary graphite pencils aren't really. You can put in a few extra branches too, if you want to elaborate on those. That's it, and that just shows up the corner of that building there, very, very nicely. I like to have that dark area there. Okay, not going to do too much to these, they're dark enough in the distance. That perhaps a little darker tone on the overhanging branches, perhaps. Very often see that, the overhanging branches. There, like that, like that, like that. You know, I'm just building up tone for the whole thing, really. Not quite as much at the top, and a little darker. The left-hand side of the trunk and amongst where potentially the shadow of the tree will be, you know, just so there's a bit of light coming from the left. This area would be quite dark, the trunk, in amongst the leafing, and also you may have a branch coming off of that. May also be a branch coming off of that. So you can add touches now that will enhance the picture. Branches come down as well as up to support the lower branches. There you go. I'm just going to bring some of these that can split there if you like. Quite often these branches do. Let's not get over elaborate with that. Okay, so that's that. It's a bit of hedging here. Don't think if I can remember rightly, it's actually a fence there, or a wall. Now that's where the wall is, just going over and just behind that tree, going back down into the valley again. Okay, so I think that's that pretty much completed. Getting there now with everything. Okay, so the light is coming from the right. Well, that's a grassy area again, so let's just make certain that's grass. Some little grasses standing up there. Okay, now this can have a little bit more tone to it. It's all very, very dark. Just adding more graphite to the paper really, that's all that's doing. So that when I come to spread, and there's another layer of branches, see I'm creating a layer of branches. Now, this is the only thing that I've not really produced much in the way of tone, so I'm going to add a little bit more tone to that. Lots of spiky areas, particularly as they go up into that light area. There's all sorts going on down there. You know, these sketches, you can really produce some lovely sort of tone effects. Right, that goes away and the brick wall finishes there. That's where the door is. That's good. Just one or two little brick tones there. Good, there you go. So that's really strengthened it. And then finally, before we wash, put some water on we need the shadow work. Now, there will be a shadow from that tree, and it could very well go up that brick wall and over the top. So that could be all in shadow. So that would help to block that off. A little bit just in front of it, perhaps, where the overhanging branches are. Now, that, depending where it's that tree there, could cast a shadow across here. And that would depict how far into that field, into this field, it actually sits. And that would also create a shadow onto that that piece of hedging. So that's that shadow. Now, from the overhang of that, the tile work there, you would get a shadow like that. Quite a deep shadow because it's side on. Okay. So that's the overhang of, could be even a little deeper thickness of the tiles. That's it. Right up to the top there. Shadow coming across. Right. Now this is where there will be a shadow under those overhanging slates on the roof. Like that. Okay, so that enhances that. Now, these two walls will be in full shadow, but these would have a slight tone. So it's not in complete shadow, but it's not in full sunlight. We want to get a difference between that and that. Same there, that's in full sunlight. This is in just slight tone. Go. So that's that. Now from this wall you will have a shadow there cast down onto the wall like that, and that probably would be at an angle, one would suspect, and of course this would then in turn be in shadow across there, up to there possibly. Then from trees here you would have a casting shadow across the track like that, up the wall, and it would be what I'd call a bit dappled. You know, it might be a bit solid there, but as it goes up the wall it opens up a little. So this is the shadow from the tree, and it goes up the roof a tad. Don't want to lose that bit of light there. So that's that. Then of course the shadow then extends across the track, possibly onto grasses there. Perhaps another little touch coming up that wall there, where it's, there you go. And then it gradually tapers away, I would have suggested. And there is just a central verge to that track. Let's just add that just to give it a bit of interest. Brilliant. Now all we do, we pick up a medium-sized brush, we damp it, so just medium-sized, well, what is that? Number 7. There you are for this A4 size. And then we start to add water to the graphite and spread it around in the form of watercolour. Well, there is a bit of a knack in this, the way we damp the graphite and spread, but if you use these techniques, I'll show you exactly what to do. So you damp the brush in water, you take off a little bit of the moisture, and you start in the distance, and you just damp those graphite areas, and that gently spreads it. See where I'm getting a little bit of a spread? Not going to do anything to the sky on this one, very little. And the more you spread, the more you lift off. So we keep that very, very simply. Clean the brush again. We work our way in to the graphite on the, just pull those graphite strips that you laid with the pencil. There we are. A little bit of hedging there, nothing much there. Gently softening. Then you pull those areas there. That's purely lines to give us an indication of where the contour of the ground. Clean the brush again. Right, let's deal with this tree. Okay, let's just spread a little bit of this graphite. A little damp, a bit more water than that. There we are. Just spread a little bit of that graphite. See, it still maintains the lines, but it softens. See the way it's gradually softening those areas. And it creates sort of like a watercolour effect. This is why I think, so once you pick up a little bit of graphite on the brush, then you can see how I'm spreading that into those corners and just extending, creating, see that very dark area there that's picking up now? Just creating that impression of overhanging branches. Now I'm going to do the really dark area. So that's that, a little lighter there. See where it's still light and dark where I've actually painted it, or drawn it, sorry. Now I'm just tidying up edges, and as with any watercolour, which this is in effect, because it's water-based graphite, they will appear quite dark while they're damp, but once they dry, it turns quite considerably lighter. Right, just a little bit there where the shadow's running up the wall, and the shadow on the, see I'm actually drawing now, because there's a lot of graphite there. I'm drawing with the pencil graphite on the brush. There we are, so it's lovely and soft. Then I'm putting in that rather uneven hedge area that's quite dark there, so it'll pick up a lot of graphite that then I can spread to produce that effect, and by dampening those outside areas you can soften them and spread that through, so you're getting varying tones in that field, and that's beginning to pull that area forward from the less intense lining at the top. Okay, so we start at the top of this this tree, just using the graphite just to soften the areas, you know, using the brush to spread the graphite and just soften, put some little weak tones on that, you know, just the way a tree would actually overhang in the summer months when you've got lots of leafing. And as we go into the darker graphite areas, you can see where I'm actually putting in the outside edges of those trees, just as if there's leafing hanging. Don't get too detailed with that, because that's not too detailed. Right, now we come to the building. Now, we're going to go into the graphite area where I've lined, just to make that one tone lighter, sorry, one tone darker than the that wall there, just to give a hint that the light is just beginning to come in on the front of this building. And there, same. Still maintains the lining, but it does give an effect of a different tone. Now I'm going to paint in the overhang shadow, maybe a little under there. Let's put a little under that overhanging there, and then of course the overhanging shadow there of the barn. That's the overhang of the roof area. Couple of areas that I've not forgot to put in, so really all I need to do is to put the overhang shadow there. Forgot about that because that would overhang as well. There would also be a small overhang shadow there. And of course, another thing I did forget, which now can go in, is the overhang, or the shadow from the barn itself on to the field. Very important area, that. So I rub that in, and then later on I can spread that. Quite deep, and it's going to be quite a large area. The sun is fairly low, and just show the corner of that and that building slightly separate shape. I presume that's how it would go. Right, now the graphite's on there, we can then use a damp brush and pull that across. Corner of that, and just pull it across, and that would then be the shadow from the building, and that would be fairly clean lines. So we don't want to soften that at all. And the roof of that other little building, so you've got the roof of that plus the side of that. There we are. So that's looking good. Okay, now we're going to produce, just deepen up, just spread the graphite on these door openings there, like that. A little bit on the grasses there, just to give a bit of entry to that. Okay, then there is damp that, just to create a small shadow effect from across that track, like that, and down into the foreground. There you go. And then that breaks out into a sunlit area, like that. And then this dark tree, well, graphite being spread now in quite a fierce manner. These are the sort of sketches. If I show you a sketch on my videos, then 9 times out of 10, this is the way I've produced the sketches. So it does make, I think, for a very, very quick and easy way of getting a tone version, and in effect a version that's very similar to a watercolour. And so now we just pop a little bit of tone onto that. Not too concerned about that. That's just a suggestion of grasses that would be improved later on. There is just a bit of tone on the top of that may be in shadow. Just a little bit of tone on that. A bit of tone on the grasses there. Pick up a bit of graphite and put that in there. And of course the walling that wall is cast to, that's casting a shadow onto that wall, like that. And that shadow would then meet up and run across at that angle onto the grass. Bit of shadow on there. And overall, that is all you need to do if you're creating these sorts of sketches. I think they, to me, they're invariably, let's just deepen those, because the graphite lays on the surface, all the dark areas, it does pay, if you can, to wet them, otherwise they tend to rub off when you cover them and bring them home. So that really is all that's needed for this sort of, just sign it in the bottom corner, that's pretty vital. That's all that's needed to produce a graphite drawing that is enhanced by using a brush and water. So it's quite simple, quite an easy way of doing things, and you end up with a version that is a watercolour, but a tone of watercolour. So it's got lines, it's got tones, it's got soft areas, it's got hard areas, you know, you've got the nice soft areas of the trees, you've got the hard lines of the building, you know, and the stone wall. Really a lovely way to produce a drawing when you're outside, and you just need 3 of these DeWint water-soluble graphite pencils, a small pot of water, doesn't have to be that large, brush, a piece of tissue and a pad. That is all you need, just a little drop of water. Quite often when I'm out, I will, you know, if it's been raining or you're near a stream or whatever, just take a tin, just a little tin, and pick up a little bit of water from that. I've even used the water from my water bottle, you know, just to damp the brush. That's all that's really needed. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that drawing exercise and demonstration, and I will be uploading more videos very shortly. Thank you for watching.